Well folks, were they scenes from the Samford Valley perhaps during our last periods of glaciation? Is this Moreton Bay during our Brisbane's last periods during the Ice Age? Did we have this marsupial cat megafauna? A really nasty bit of gear, I might add. Although I think it'd be awesome to have as a pet, no one to play in your front yard. And were these people responsible for those amazing creatures sort of being a bit too slow and a bit too tasty? Was Brisbane ever frozen? Well, we're going to have a look at this. Was this the Brisbane Valley? Maybe this was the Brisbane Valley. It's hard to say. This question was posed by a good friend of this channel, our old mate Rob from Walkabout with Rob. Here he is in his new location, shoveling snow. I don't know why he suggested we do something on Brisbane Ice Ages. Not sure, but anyway, we'll get there. So anyway, you know the deal. If you dig the vibe, like and subscribe, and Geology rocks. Let's rock.
Hello, I'm Simon Townsend, and I'm very, very proud to announce the coming of our Logie-winning show, Simon Townsend's Wonderworld.
Well, folks, this week we lost Simon. This is him in his earlier days when he was arrested as a conscientious objector to the Vietnam War. Full kudos, Simon. More should have done it. Went to Holsworthy, ended up in a solitary confinement. You know, the way we treated our young men. We either sent them over there to get shot and psychologically destroyed, or we locked them up. There's your choice. Welcome to Australia. Anyway, I'm shooting this actually on Australia Day in 2025, so I'm putting this little piece at the beginning of the video just on the off chance one or two of you might not go right to the end. So anyway, we lost a great Australian, and there's not a person that grew up in the 70s or the 80s that didn't know this man and that dog. So anyway, rest in peace, Simon. And remember, the world really is wonderful.
Rocking with T-Rocks, he's the man, he'll show you what it means. From all mystic shores to outback sands. Rocks, he's your guide to our ancient land.
Well, here we are, folks, above the equator at the height of a geostationary satellite. And we're just going to cruise down on our beautiful brown land to talk about ice ages. You would think Australia would be as far from an ice age as you could get, and you wouldn't be too wrong. But it has happened. And it's happened more than once, and there's quite a bit of evidence in the landscape, particularly in South Australia. We'll have a little look at that. So we're just going to zoom in on Moreton Bay, because the question is, when did Brisbane last freeze over? When did we have our glaciers here in Queensland? Well, you're going to have to hang around, you know what it's like. But anyway, let's have a look at that now. Well, folks, to work out if this has ever happened, or is ever likely to happen, we've got to start at the very beginning.
A very good place to start.
You knew it was coming. So how far back do we have to go? A long way. Let me introduce you to Rodina. And Rodina is way back here, 2.5 billion years ago. This is what the continent looked like, and the only piece of crust that still exists today is here. So at this point in time, what we now call Brisbane, and in fact most of the east of Australia, was on the bottom of that ocean floor. This is a geological map of Rodina. This is a long time ago, 2.5 billion years ago. But if you look up the top here, I've marked what will become Australia, and the Amadeus Basin is actually there. It's visible, and here it is. This is the Amadeus Basin today. It produces a lot of petroleum for us. So we ended up looking like, well, pretty much like this. Snowball Earth Mark I, the Huronian glaciation event, where a great deal of the Earth became covered in glaciers. But we didn't get this in Brisbane because we were still on the ocean floor. But how did this happen? Well, these little fellas, cyanobacteria. In one of our previous videos, we looked at the Great Oxygenation Event, where these little guys just released oxygen, and they turned into this, more and more cyanobacteria. And if you get lots and lots of them nowadays, it looks like this, an algal bloom. This is the same bacteria. And when they die, they form this. Wrong slide. Agadoo. Never again. Anyway, they form this, banded iron formations all over the world, particularly, however, in Western Australia, where these things are thousands of metres deep. And the iron is very pure, and we make good money out of it. So, T-Rocks, how does oxygen cool the planet? Well, let me introduce you to CH4, or methane. Now, methane is a very powerful greenhouse gas. It traps heat about 200 times more efficiently than CO2, but it's fairly fragile. So over 100 years, it's about 28 times more effective as a greenhouse gas than CO2 is. Well, let me introduce you to molecular oxygen, or O2. This is the type of oxygen that plants and cyanobacteria produce. So they produce gigatons of this stuff, and it's very reactive. So it grabs hold of the methane in the atmosphere, reacts with it, and forms carbon dioxide and water. And even though we're making carbon dioxide, it's only 1/28th as powerful as a greenhouse gas, as is methane. Remember, greenhouse gases don't stop the heat coming in. They stop it leaving the planet. They trap the infrared, and they make it hotter and hotter. Well, if there's less of it, it gets colder and colder because it's usually in balance. So with the methane being removed, the planet just got colder and colder until we had Snowball Earth version 1.0. Now, I'm skipping over quite a few glaciation events. There have been others. So why isn't it still a snowball? How did we break out of this cycle? Well, our old friends, volcanoes. They started spewing out lots and lots of flood lavas as the continents moved on their tectonic way, and the carbon dioxide saved the planet, and it started to slowly thaw out. And not for the last time in our history have volcanoes thawed this planet out.
No ending! No ending! No ending!
Welcome to Snowball Earth 2.0, the Sturtian glaciation, around 600 million years ago.
As endless eons wheeled and passed, time and the pure essences of heaven, the moisture of the earth, the powers of the sun and the moon, all worked upon a certain rock old as creation.
Well, folks, between 717 and 661 million years ago, we'll call that 700 million amongst friends, this started happening. Rodina started to break up and then reform. And when it did that, there was reduced tectonic activity at the plate boundaries for some reason, and the output of carbon dioxide, the natural output, lowered. Also, the cyanobacteria, another branch of the family, had learned another trick, making calcium carbonate shells, and that also sequestered carbon, and we got another snowball. Down went the temperature. So this is known as the Sturtian glaciation event, and it lasted for 40 million years, and there was more than one in that. Good enough for our illustrations. So why is it called Sturtian? Well, it's named after this guy, Charles Sturt, one of our amazing explorers. Here's his statue in Adelaide, just over from the awesome Adelaide markets, I might add. And the guy that worked this out was a guy called Walter Houchin in 1900. Wandering around Adelaide, he started to notice some things like these are erratics. These are granite boulders in the middle of nowhere. They can only be moved by ice. Here's a big conglomerate boulder in the middle of nowhere, moved by ice. And just to the south of Adelaide, down on that peninsula, you've got these glacial carve marks in the bedrock. Now, this is an illustration. This is actually in New York. These are only 15,000 years old. These are in Central Park, actually, in New York. So we had glaciers in South Australia 600 million years ago, and we had them right up into nearly where Lake Eyre is. So another form of evidence of glaciation is called tillites. Now, glaciers, when they grind over rock, produce a floury substance that's called tilth. And when that gets left behind and it gets lithified, turned into a rock, it's called a tillite. And they're different in every location, but they are absolutely unique to glaciation. And these tillites are found all over South Australia. So if you're down there, south of Adelaide, there's a wonderful walk called the Magpie Geology Walk through the Sturt Gorge National Park. You will see tillites everywhere. Matter of fact, that gorge is mainly made out of tillites. It's a very interesting place. But I digress. So, T-Rox, how do you know about all this South Australian glacier stuff? You know, you can't have been down there. You live in Queensland. Well, I have been down there, but I saw it with these two legends on Ask the Leyland Brothers when I was in my teens. And these guys sparked the wanderlust in thousands of Australians, and they are just awesome legends. So how do you visually illustrate a reduction in volcanic activity? I'll give you the backwards volcano. So we've had enough Snowball Earth, T-Rox. When are we going to get Snowball Brisbane? Well, we're getting there. Those restaurants look really cold, don't they? But anyway, I digress, of course. We all know the oldest rocks that Brisbane are built on are about 400 million years old. These are the shales, the Narrenlee Fernvale shales and the Brisbane and the Bunya phyllite or phyllite. Now, 400 million years means they were on the bottom of the ocean 400 million years ago, so we are not going to get any glaciation before that because we didn't exist. So let's run forward so we can see a point where there is glaciation in Australia, and we do exist. Well, here we go, folks. Gondwana, 300 million years ago, and there's glaciation. Doesn't quite make it to Queensland, but it's back in South Australia again, even though it isn't South Australia. Here we are, 290 million years ago. Oh, it's gone right up into central Queensland. We'll have a look at that in a second. And it doesn't make it to the coast, even though the coast is here. So we're still not getting frozen. Then we have a big period where there's not much glaciation. This is where a lot of our coal was formed because there were forests everywhere. Glyceropsis, all these other plants, some of the things we find up in Ipswich. Then this is the closest we get. It nearly makes it. It's right up into what is now central Queensland, but it doesn't come down to Brisbane, doesn't make it to where we are. And we can see some of these deposits. This is Monto. That pink stuff that I've coloured in is a particular conglomerate that contains tillites. There's not much of it in Queensland, but that's it right there. So here's our Earth's history rolling through. As you can see, Gondwana, down there, we are slowly breaking apart from Gondwana, and we're going to head right up and start moving away. Now, when we do, you'll notice there's no ice because the Earth was very warm during this period. This is where our coal was formed, as I said before. Forests everywhere, and the fungus that would eat that lignite lignum in those plants had not yet evolved. So they were just falling into the freshwater swamps and turning into coal. You can see Australia pulling away there. New Zealand's already racked off. And we're getting up there 35 million years ago. Not much ice still. So we've got to look to find out just when this area did get ice. So I think to look at now is the last glacial maxima, which, wasn't that long ago. Let's have a quick look at this though. These are the mass extinctions going back through time. This is when life was nearly wiped out several times. We grew up, and up the top there, the end of the Cretaceous, that's the old Chicxulub dinosaur killer. Wasn't that big. We've had bigger extinctions before. I've seen bigger. And here we are in here, the age of mammals. That's us. Most of us anyway. Except for the lizard people, of course. Oh, talk about that. We'll get blocked. So, Brisbane, during this time, well, that was probably the Brisbane River. Might have been. Not sure. Big mix of ammonites and Cretaceous dinosaurs there, but hey, that's AI for you. This is the beach down at Nudgee. Probably not. Not too sure, but what do? It's hard to get photographs. The satellite resolution during the Jurassic was absolute garbage. It really was. So let's have a quick look. Now, this is more modern times. This is 5,000 years ago. We're going to go back 10,000 years ago. Australia, sea levels are changing. 13,000 years ago, 15, 24, 50,000 years ago, 60,000 years ago. Now, there's no ice here because during the last ice age, Australia did not get any ice. This is the evidence dates of Aboriginal occupation in Australia. And there's method in my manual, stick with me. Let's go back, we're seeing 40,000 years, there's a number. So we can see there's our last glacial maximum there, 24,000 years ago in the world. This is where the glaciers reached their peak. And we know sea level was 120 metres lower. So there was a lot more of Australia, but there was ice, but it was in Tasmania and in the Australian Alps. But what did happen was these people arrived about 40,000 years ago. They probably arrived before that. Well, let's not argue about that. There's probably been multiple waves of people come into this country over time. Let's not bother. These people were certainly here 24,000 years ago during the LGM because we found their campfires on Stradbroke Island. And had we not bulldozed half the southeast Queensland before they got here, we'd have probably found some more. So they had a big effect on the flora and fauna of Australia because they're an apex predator. They don't muck around. They want to eat you. You're going to get eaten. These guys will track you through anything. They're just amazing people when it comes to hunting. So how did that affect Australia's fauna? Well, it affected it a great deal, actually, because one, the climate was changing. We'd come from a glacial maxima. The place was becoming more arid. So those creatures were under stress anyway, and then a number one top apex predator that was smarter than anything they've ever... Did I say predator? I meant predator. Freudian slip. Sorry, taxman, I didn't mean it. Anyway, these guys were apex predators, and a few things would have a go at them, but nothing ate men. Men ate everything else. So what did we have here at the time that we don't have now? Well, we did. We had megafauna. We had these guys. Great big wombats. Their name's Latin, it doesn't really mean anything, so I'm not bothering with them. We also had probably the most awesome megafauna of them all, the marsupial lion. This thing had jaws on it like a modern set of jaws of life. This thing could shear through rebar. An amazing creature, but not good enough. These guys found that they were quite slow, probably a little bit stupid, and quite tasty. So you just can't get away from these people in this countryside. They'll track you down. And this is their fire farming. So they light the fires, the animals start moving. Once they move, a good native warrior with one of those spears will take you out 25, 30 metres away. There were also these things, which is, a great big emu, massive thing. Like, they don't look tasty, slow, and definitely stupid. They had no chance. And they were gone. There was a moa in New Zealand, quite happy there for quite a few million years. The Maori come along, slow, stupid, tasty, extinct, gone. All we found was their bones. So, and the country was drying out. It was becoming more arid. So these creatures were under stress anyway, and they just couldn't survive. We've still got the modern kangaroo and the modern emu, and the modern emu was here the whole time. So was the modern kangaroo. But they were big kangaroos, all gone. None left. We saw what we did to the thylacine, the Tasmanian tiger. Same thing, another apex predator, but this one had guns. Game over. These things look delicious. So to the question, has Brisbane ever had an ice age? Have we ever experienced glaciation? The answer is no. Took me 20 minutes to get to that, but the answer is definitely no. Hang on, what's that sound? What's that, Skip? Someone stealing the helicopter? No! Aren't these guys cute in the snow? It's not something you see very often, but every year it snows in Australia, and the wildlife cope with it. You just don't often see it. Kangaroos of snow is not something you put together, but they cope with it. They're resilient creatures, they really are. Unfortunately, they're also quite tasty, but anyway, we've already talked about that. No kanga bangers for Australia Day. So, Snowball Earth, hey, that's a pretty new term. In 1992, it was coined by an American geologist called Joseph Kirschvink. Joe, as he's called to his friends. And he'd been looking at the evidence for many years. It's not a new thing about various terms of glaciation, but no one ever really thought the whole planet froze. And it does, and it has, and it's done it before, and it'll probably do it again. If it gets to a tipping point, and it freezes fairly quickly, they think it freezes up in just a few million years, and then it stays frozen until something unfreezes it. So there you go. Here's an interview with Joe. The audio's not that important. He's still around, still out there smacking rocks and doing the business in the north of America. And from what I understand, he's a pretty good geologist. So there we go. So Snowball Earth, we got to watch the greenhouse gases. They're really important. Not too little, not too much. Just right. A little bit of the old the Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Not too hot, not too cold. Just right is where we need to be. So that's it for the week. Radioactive Brisbane coming up soon. Remember, Geology rocks. Keep rocking. T-Rocks out.
And I see your Schwartz is as big as mine.
I am very disappointed!
So many assholes. So few bullets.